Today's video is all about creating fall-themed cards. I will be using the Hero Arts My Monthly Hero Classic and Premium Kit, and also incorporating products from their regular release, which always work so well together with the kits. And I have a few tips and tricks that I want to share along the way. Hi everyone, I'm Mindy Eggen and welcome to my channel. I would love it if you subscribed, liked this video, and shared it with your friends. Before I get started with my cards, here's a quick look at the My Monthly Hero Classic kit. These kits are always jam-packed with products. This one has one of my favorite, which is a window die and coordinating layering stencil. Then for the premium kit, you are getting some bronze glitter cardstock, an additional ink pad, and also another stamp and coordinating die set. Now, at full disclosure, I do the intro videos on the Hero Arts YouTube channel, so a lot of things that I'm going to be working with today, I had already pre-colored or pre-cut out. I am going to show you how the layering stencil works, but I did just kind of want to give you a heads up. I'm not going to create everything from scratch, but I will walk you through my process and also the colors or maybe the products that I'm using. I am going to have all of those supplies listed in the video description and over on my blog as well. Now here, I was just kind of sorting out the products that were in the Classic and Premium kit. I wanted to start with that color layering stencil. So this is the window die. I die cut one from white cardstock and one from some sand cardstock from Hero Arts. I will be working with the sand colored one, and I think I do have an example of another one on white cardstock that I'll show you a little bit later on. So to do the stenciling, I thought it would be really handy to dig out one of these waffle flower grip mats. These are super sticky, and I thought it would hold down my leaves really well. My leaves still kind of popped up a little bit, but the grip mat was still super helpful. Then I applied the first stencil over my image. You can see where it's going to highlight just some of the areas from that window die. And then I'm going to start ink blending. I'm going to be using the same colors that are included in the Classic kit, which is Spicy Mustard, Cherry, Caramel, and Espresso. You'll be receiving the mini ink cubes in the kit. I'm going to be using my full-size ink pads and some small blending brushes because these work really nice when I want to focus a particular color to a small area. Now this is the first layer of the stencil, but I like to use multiple colors on each layer of the stencil. I used Spicy Mustard, Cherry, and then I'm going to come in with the Caramel ink because these are just absolutely beautiful colors once layered together. And one of the things I really love about fall cards is I can do anything because if it mixes and creates brown, it just totally plays into the fall theme. Now to remove the stencil from this grid mat or this sticky mat, you just need to peel it up. And I think it's honestly one of the reasons why I don't use it very often is because I feel like I have to pull so hard to remove my stencils. It is a super handy tool, especially in instances like this. But I will admit my personal experience and personal take on it is one of the reasons I don't reach for it is because it is so sticky and everything is kind of hard to remove. But that's just personal opinion. It's still a helpful tool. Now that was the second layer of the stencil. I had brought in espresso and some cherry. And now the third layer of the stencil, I'm really coming in heavy-handed with that cherry. And I'm even going to bring in some more of that espresso to add even more contrast to the mushrooms. I think it's always fun to try combinations on sand or craft colored cardstock because it's always going to give you a completely different look than if you were to do it on white. Now, one thing I did find really helpful is I take my palette knife and I help kind of pull my cardstock off of that. Now, I'm going to pause this right here because I want to show you this is a card front I had started. This is on white cardstock where I did some yellow, green, and purples. I have a sprayed background, but I ended up messing up this card pretty bad. So this is why you don't see it in the rest of the video, but I did want to show it to you as an example. I'm going to continue working on the card front or with the card front that I created with that sand cardstock. I have a piece of Deluxe white cardstock here that I'm going to be putting behind it. But instead of having that stark white, I'm going to bring in some of the colors that I used on the front of the card. I don't want these to overpower my design in the center. So I'm just going to come in light-handed with that spicy mustard and my cherry ink. I switched to larger blending brushes so I could cover a lot more area quicker. And then when the two colors kind of overlap each other, I'm going to get a very, very soft orange. In my countdown card project that is over on my blog, I had turned this window into a shaker, but for this time, I wanted to use those cute little happy gnomes that I already have colored. Before I do any attaching, I'm going to splatter on some white ink, just one of my go-tos when I want to do something to the background without it overpowering my card front. Just adding those splatters does a lot. Now, once that's dry, I'm going to start adding in these happy gnomes. These, like I said, I had colored off screen. I love how they turned out. They are so super cute. And I attached them with a tape runner to the back panel. Now, I do want to still pop this up. I'm not going to turn it into a shaker card, even though the kit does contain clear acetate sheets, so you can create a shaker. I'm just going to add some thin foam strips around the panel and add that over the front and trim off any excess. So it's still going to give me quite a bit of lift and separation for my images. Then I have a coordinating sentiment that I'm going to pop up in the top center there. Now the last thing I'm going to do is bring in that unicorn lacquer pen that comes in the kit, and I'm going to add white spots to my mushrooms. Be sure to kind of practice with this before you come over to your card project. It comes out pretty quick and fluid. So that is card number 1 using the classic kit and also that Happy Gnomes stamp set from the September release. Now on to my second card that I'm going to create. This one is using the Acanthus bold print. And I wanted to show you a trick. I had seen some comments in a group where people were struggling inking up their backgrounds and getting complete coverage. So here is a trick that I like to do. I take a rubber brayer and I pick up my ink. Full-size ink pads work the best for this. I pick up the ink with a rubber brayer and brayer that over my background. This is such a quick and easy way to stamp your backgrounds. Now keep in mind, these are red rubber stamps, so they're deeply etched. They're going to give a great impression. And you also need to remove the foam insert if you're using a MISTI stamping tool. Another thing to keep in mind is that it is going to give you a softer look. So you're like, this is espresso ink, which is a dark brown, but you're not going to get as dark of a coverage unless you layer that ink a couple times. So keep that in mind, but I would really try applying the ink with a rubber brayer. Now, once again, I am adding my white splatters to my background, and then I'm going to start building up my scene. I will be using the tree stump fancy die and that fall gnome. The tree stump I had die cut from brown cardstock, and I'm adding espresso ink to the sides and also the very bottom just to give it a little bit of contrast and dimension. And then I can start layering my scene together. Now my gnome, I had die cut that from white cardstock and I colored it with Copic markers. I love doing that to die cuts. I think it gives such realism to the image versus using cardstock. So I'm adding in my liquid glue, putting in my tree stump. So my gnome is going to be over there with the tree stump. And I have my gnome holding a little lantern. There's a few different objects in that set that your gnome could be holding or even just to use as scene builders. So I did pop up the gnome with some foam squares to make that stand out from that tree stump a little bit. And then I'll have a sentiment that's going to go right at the top. So even though the Acanthus background is very kind of fancy looking, just by doing it in a soft tone color of ink, it plays in really well with my gnome scene. I'm going to bring in a white Jelly Roll pen and add some highlights to my images. And then for the lantern, I brought in my Sparkle Lacquer pen. So that's going to add a little bit of shimmer and shine to my lantern. And that will finish off a card number 2. Now card number 3 is also going to be using a background stamp. This is the Gingko leaves. I also have some images that I had already colored up from the Hello Fungi stamp set. This is such a beautiful stamp set. It also has coordinating dies to go with it that you can purchase. And I also have an image there from Happy Gnome. Now I don't end up using that Happy Gnome. He's the one where it's a gnome sitting on the mushroom, but I am definitely saving it. So the Gingko leaves I stamped in Forever Green onto some Pesto Cardstock, and I'm going around all the outer edges. First I started with moss ink, and then I came in a little bit with that Forever Green, and I think I may have even come back in a little bit with some espresso. That would really help kind of darken that edge up a little bit. Now, another fun thing that I like to do, or that I've discovered doing, is I am taking some of this spring green and gold metallic spray. I put a little bit onto my work surface and splattered it. So pretty. It is so shiny and metallic looking. Definitely going to be using that for splatters more in the future. Now I can start building my scene. So that one set of mushrooms you can see on the card front, I already went ahead and attached it down with a tape runner. And this other kind of bigger bunch of mushrooms, I wanted to have that kind of lifted off again a little bit for dimension, but there's a lot of fine areas on there. So instead of using foam squares, I layered together about 3 pieces. 2 of them I die cut from white cardstock and then just layered it with liquid glue. That's going to make sure there's even coverage all over kind of those smaller areas. And then I can place that onto the front of the card so it's overlapping that group of mushrooms behind. And then I did the same thing with this sentiment. And then I'm going to call that one good for this card. I love that green mixed in with kind of my bluish purple mushrooms. I love how those came out. So that is card number 3. Now, card number 4. This one's going to be using some elements from the regular release and also the premium kit. I'm starting out with sand cardstock that I have held down onto my glass surface here with just some rolled up tape, taped this stencil down. So this is the Leaves and Swirls stencil, and I'm adding in kind of those same colors I did earlier, a little bit of yellow, which is the spicy mustard, and then coming in with cherry. This one is very sporadic. You're going to see here that there's some yellow, some darker areas. I like that look. And then I'm going to come back in with some more of that ink to kind of fill in. I guess like if this was white cardstock, I would go over the background so it's not so stark white. In this case, I didn't want it so stark brown. So I went back over those areas with my blending brush. Now I'm adding some more splatters. This one is of the orange and shimmer metallic spray. Really having fun flicking on that shimmer spray to add metallics. Actually, that first one I think may have been the spring green and gold, and then down at the bottom that you can't see is the orange and shimmer metallic spray. So I did a little bit of both. Now I already kind of had an idea where all my images were going to go. So I'm getting my sentiment stamped first, which I did in a Versafine Clair ink. It's just a really nice black ink that would stand out really well against my kind of mixed media background. And now all of these images I had colored off screen, and I'm going to layer them around so that they are kind of dancing and having fun around this campfire. So all of these images do come from the premium kit. The critters in the very far background are added with tape runner, and the ones kind of more in the forefront are added with foam squares. So I know I didn't show every single step of creating the card, but I do hope you find inspiration in these cards. I really had fun creating these fall themed cards, and for some reason I'm really enjoying fall cards right now. I think it's because of all the rich colors that go with the fall season. So again, these are the products from the My Monthly Hero Classic and Premium Kit, plus some from their regular release. I will have all of the supplies listed down below in the video description and on my blog too. Thanks so much for joining me.